Yes, introverts, extroverts, and everywhere in between. I am the winning introvert, and I want to share a bit about taking ownership of one's narrative. There's two sources that I mainly want to speak about. The first is a book called The Wisdom of Islamic Civilization by Dr. M.A.J. Begg. I think it's a great book, and what's voiced is not necessarily Dr. M.A.J. Begg's views. What he's done is collect voices from the ancient past and put them all into one work so we can read them. Now, there's a part of this book where a traveler, someone who traveled the continents of the ancient world, is speaking about what he saw. And he starts off, he's gone to India and he's like, the Indians, they are skilled at magic and they're great mathematicians and they're good with the arts. And then he's gone to Greece and he said something like, the Greeks have an amazing culture and they're great philosophers. And then he's gone, the Negroes, they are cheerful and happy workers. And that really stood out to me for obvious reasons. Um, because there's another source from Ibn Khaldun, who's an ancient writer. He said the blacks, as a rule, are quite similar to dumb animals. But that didn't really phase me so much. This guy calling saying that reducing all of the contributions of Africans to art, culture, science, everything, reducing all of that, even if where he went was not advanced at all, reducing that to just being cheerful and happy workers stood out because this guy was actually trying to pay everyone a compliment. So, in other words, that was the best that he could find to say. And that's not his fault. If that's what he saw, that's what he saw. But it's like, wow, I'm sure many other black people who may be watching this can attest that there can be an element of shame with the narrative of black history, with how it's told, and even certain misconceptions about black history. So there can be an element of shame there anyway. Maybe it just touched one of those nerves for me. Um, but it brings the question that, does that history define me? For one, I may not even be related to those Africans, but even if I am, the question is, who am I going to be? Who do I decide to be? And this is where it comes to the introvert part, because the second source that really got to me was by Van Ian Stewart and Van Joins, who were major contributors in the field of transactional analysis. Transactional analysis is a system of thought which is uh, has contributed to psychotherapy. It's used in schools. It's used all over the board. Um, but in their work, I think it's in the work personality adaptations. They're speaking about the different personality types, and they've gone, oh, this personality, they make good lawyers because da 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 da. This personality, they make good detectives because XYZ. This personality, they make good such and such. And then they've gone to the schizoid adaptation, which is the introvert of introverts. And they've said the schizoid, they make good employees. And it just took me right back to that happy and cheerful worker thing. And again, if that's what it is, that's what it is. And I'm sure that they said more, but again, that's what stood out to me. Um, and definitely is more that schizoids have to offer. But if that's what a schizoid is going to be remembered as, I don't want any parts of that. And I've mentioned before that schizoid is my main adaptation. Um, so the question then becomes, for you, maybe you're not even an introvert. Maybe what's your narrative has been, you're the life of the party. You're the one that's always good for a fun time. Is that the narrative that you're willing to die with? Is that the narrative that's going to be the be all and end all of who you are? Yes, there are things beyond that are within your reach. They may be uncomfortable for you, but are you willing to step outside of what's familiar to you in order to get there? And for me, I answer that question. I'm 100% willing to do that. And what I would like to share with you all is to not buy in wholeheartedly to these labels that are thrown around and these concepts, you know, of being a certain personality type, of being from a certain background, etc., etc. These are all things that can be true, but at what point do you start to not accept where it's not serving you anymore? Are you willing to step beyond what's supposed to be the limits of these things to actually be more? Because I think while it's good to recognize who we are, the goal is always to expand and change. So I wonder, if you're watching this, what are some of the limits that you attribute to either your culture, your race, or your personal culture, um, i.e., your personality and how you interact with others? And I'll give you an example. Someone might believe that they always need to be the person to keep the peace, or they always need to be the person to back down if an argument gets to a certain point. That's who they believe that's who they believe they are. So that's where their fighting spirit stops when it gets to that point. Someone else might believe that they always need to be in command because in their experience other people have proved incompetent or incapable. But it can be a detriment where you have people, maybe you're leading a team who is competent, but now you're micromanaging them. At what point are you willing to acknowledge where you need to go beyond who you think you are? You're seeing the world through a lens,